and Zelda. I mix them up. In the Spanish version, I use a different... Okay, I shut up. Hola community, welcome to another episode of Blender.Today Live, this weekly meeting where we see what's new in Blender, in the latest version of Blender, in the next and in older versions of Blender. We are in a first for Blender. There are currently 5 active releases, or not release, but actually active versions of Blender. Why? Well, because the long-term support releases also count. 2.83 back in the 80s. 2.83 is still being updated. We just got the 20th fixed release of 2.83 recently. And next month in June, because we are in May already, it will be end of life. So it's a very short amount of period of time, but 2.83 is still active. 2.93 is still active for another year. 3.1 is the current stable release. 3.2 is in beta. Last week was in alpha, but now it's in beta officially. And 3.3 is in alpha. What does it mean? Well, not really much. For 3.3 alpha, there is literally nothing has changed. I think a tooltip has, I don't know, like really nothing, because the change to beta was done this morning. Actually, it was just a few hours ago. It was supposed to happen last week, but there were some issues with libraries that needed to be properly fixed. So it's good that we waited a few more days. So yeah, the splash screen, that is a big thing. Why is beta a big thing? Well, one, because we get to see the splash screen. Before, the splash was released only at the end, or on like the official releases. But there are a few reasons why using it, why adding the splash screen during the beta is nicer, because then people that are using the beta get to see it. Developers that use it also get to see it. It gives it a bit more life, you know, for people that are trying the latest. And also it's a bit more fun incentive for people to use the beta, because remember, now starts the time where you should please test any files. We're in beta, so beta means everything that worked in the past should work now. So if it doesn't, please report it. Open your most complex files. Just don't treat it as an alpha anymore. It's something that should work. So anything that is unexpected, please report it. Go to help menu, report the bug, and report it. That's it. There is even a video on how to report a bug. Anyway, so is everything okay? I'm checking on the chat, by the way, here. So if anything, audio is fine. We're gonna see, let's see the splash screen. So it was announced just a few minutes ago. The splash screen made by Oksana Dobrovolska. It's the first time that we have this kind of concept art. I think in Blender 2.5, actually there is one release. And this is a trivia for when you want to be cool at a party. You can ask people, hey, did you know that Blender has one splash screen that is not made in Blender? You know which one it is? It's 2.5, but like not use another software. Like this last splash screen has a bit of Photoshop and Blender. But previously there is one in 2.5. This one here, 2.5 Alpha 0 of Blender, 2.5, didn't have any Blender at all. This is pure GIMP or Krita. I think it's Krita, and it's just crazy. So there is a Krita splash screen in Blender. So yeah. What else? It looks like the camera is low FPS. Oh, I hope not. Is it really low FPS? Maybe it's struggling. There's a lot of light in here, so you shouldn't struggle. My memory, no, CPU is fine. So I hope it's just temporary. I was building Blender, by the way, so that's one reason. I just finished building Blender, because now when you open Blender, it's gonna say this 3.3 alpha, and yeah, this ugly. Well, I'm not a big fan of this quick setup screen. It's not ugly though. It just needs some more love. It's just a bit too much for a new user. And also this load 3.2 settings button shouldn't go away like the first time you save settings. Otherwise, anyway, that's for another episode. Enough with the trivia. So that is the splash screen. You can check more of the artist in this is how it looks. Beautiful, so nice. Some blue, like by looking at the splash screens in the previous releases, we were lacking some color. There was dark, one colorful. So it's good to have some more color back in the splash screen, something more, yeah, more inviting. So what else? We are live. We are streaming live, by the way. So if you want to ask some questions, I'm going to try to answer them towards the end of the show. You can leave your questions on Blender.Today or on the Blender.community in the Today category. So there are already 6 questions, and you can leave your own over here, Blender.community. Okay. What else? Oh, and you can see more of the artists. We tweeted this in all social media, but you can see you can find more of the artist in the thread here, and in the link in the description. I link to her art station and Instagram as well. It's all over the place. Look at the art. It's amazing. Just crazy. Crazy that people are this talented and they're using Blender. That's super cool. Let's get started, shall we? Okay. My favorite, I think this is my favorite feature of the week. It is related to the video sequence editor. And video sequence editor. And this week is actually a very special week because we have the main developer of the video sequence editor, Richard. It's here in Amsterdam. He came for a week to visit the studio and catch up with the devs and plan what is the future of the video sequence editor. We also have Hans Goody from the geometry nodes and UI team here for longer, actually for 7 weeks or something like that. And then we have tomorrow, I think, Jack Luke also arriving here. So, and I think it's gonna stay for 2 weeks or so. So full house at the Blender studio. And that's so cool, so cool. Finally, COVID is over-ish, knock on wood. But that makes it so people can fly in and enjoy this huge office that Blender has that is not even half full. Okay, I said my favorite feature of the video sequence editor is that now drag and dropping works as expected. Okay, disclaimer: drag and dropping from the file browser that hasn't been applied for other yet, but for other areas like dragging it from my file browser. But if you drag and drop now, you can actually choose where to drag and drop it. Again, these are the kind of things that if it's the first time you watch this show, or you are not really familiar with Blender's video sequence editor or some areas, this is the kind of thing is like, what's new, Pablo? You're dragging a thing here. Well, let me tell you, it used to drag and drop it at the beginning where the mouse, where the cursor is, and that was super annoying because no matter where would you drop it, it would be very inconsistent. Or I guess you could say it's consistent because it was always at the mouse, but you couldn't drop it anywhere you want. So for example, if I want to override part of this, you can just drag and drop it and then drop it there. Super neat. Very, I know, very basic, but hey, let's be happy about this kind of stuff. You can still use snapping if you want to snap it to seconds, to the frame, for example, to the current frame. You can still do that. So this is a huge addition. What else? Neozoid. What's new in Grease Pencil in Blender 3.3? There is nothing new in Blender 3.3 yet. No, wait. I think there is one thing, because, you know, 3.3 started a few hours ago, so there's really no time to add anything new. However, I think you are lucky, because in the Grease Pencil team, I think they added some auto masking. I'm gonna mention it in a bit. I just want to... Is it in the wiki though? Release notes 3.3 Grease Pencil. Yes, okay, I'm gonna mention this in a bit, but there is features in 3.3 alpha, so never mind. There is new stuff, but it was literally added when, come on, there was like history. There was at 4 p.m. Like 1 hour ago. That's awesome. Okay, what else? There is another feature in the video sequence editor that some versions ago, Blender went from supporting 32 channels in the video sequence editor to 128. Plenty of channels. This made it so the scaling of the viewport, like this nice smooth scaling of the, not viewport, but the 2D viewport, the editor, was a bit too flexible. It was letting you see every channel up to 128, even though maybe you were using 2 channels, 3 channels. And yeah, that has been solved by a setting in the view menu that allows you to limit the timeline view to basically only scale all the way to where to the amount of channels that you have visible, that you're actually using. So yeah, basically made it visible. The option is in the here in the view menu, limit view to contents. So now when you scroll up, you wouldn't... the height. Yeah, the height is limited to the content, basically. So you can still zoom out and see all the channels in the universe. I guess that's useful for what? For like moving things 100 channels up? I guess? I don't know. This much flexibility to me, it's great, but handle with care, let's say. Okay, next. I think that's it with the video sequence editors. Let me have some water because it's super warm today. It's actually summerish in the Netherlands. 18 degrees. And sunny. Next, let's switch gears into... Oh, let's switch pipes. Not gear. Pipes into geometry nodes. Because this week we have finally... Well, first, one node has been renamed. Remove attribute has been renamed to remove named attribute. And maybe you can tell where this is going. Speaking of named attributes, the panel that used to be called used attributes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, this was a panel that was added. It was maybe what, 2-3 weeks only, because it was added and now it got renamed before Beacon 3, so Blender before the beta, so now it's part of Blender. It used to be called used attributes, which is technically correct. So if I go to geometry, well, no, I don't need to go to geometry nodes, but if I add a new geometry node, the panel used to be called used attributes. The name got changed to internal dependencies because that is that's more descriptive. It's also allows you in the future, if you have other dependencies, so like objects, for example, or yeah, dependencies that are that you care about. Like, okay, this geometry nodes modifier group is adding or removing this amount of attributes. Adding these attributes is reading this, and it's also reading from this object or that object. So more like debugging. Now, just keep in mind that has changed name. And with that said, the named attributes is no longer experimental. It's now enabled for everyone. So it's a reason to celebrate. when things come out of experimental. It's a reason to celebrate. People using subdivision, adaptive subdivision from cycles, experimental, may understand that there are reasons to celebrate when things come out of experimental. So yeah, now you don't have to have it enabled anymore. The nodes are going to be visible, the stored name attribute, the removed name attribute, and so on. Related to that, there is a default attribute name now in inputs and outputs. So geometry nodes, group inputs and outputs get a new property that controls the attribute name used for that field input or output when assigning the node group to a modifier for the first time. If the default name is assigned to an input, the default use attribute name becomes true. So yay. Next, this is a refactor, that internal refactor under the hood for better detecting the type of field inputs that a node can receive. In other words, it means that it makes it more feature-proof, more readable, better control for the development wise, and for the user, performance improvements. The nodes map range, random value, switch, and combine XYZ. These are literally, in the last few days, I've been using at least these three so many times, dozens, hundreds of times. And they're all now faster. How much faster? Well, between 2 and 4 times faster. That's so cool. I was, the switch and the combine XYZ. The switch, I've been using it for, I watched a tutorial for building generator, I think, in procedural building. No, it's not this one. This one, Camera Build. If you don't know this channel, follow it. It's it has this tutorial about like how to build procedural buildings in 5 parts, and it's so funny to see the entire thing. And the first video has 50-something thousand views. The second part is like a 5-part video, 17, 8K, 6K, like people are going down. But Camera Build, if you are watching, I watched the entire 6 parts, and it's amazing. I am trying to remake this at home and learning so much. And also, at some point in one video, it mentions the right click select, like a proposal on how to make things better. So I really appreciate that. Rest assured that people are looking at it, and I will try to pass that info to the rest of the team. Okay, next I'm gonna share this link in the chat so people can go and give it a follow, because it's really good content and it's really well explained. And next, it's I've been watching a lot of video tutorials lately, and it's so cool. Like Blender, like Blender is popular, yes, but it's not just because of developers making features and stuff. The community making, the amount of artists making insane tutorials and making so easy and so good, so easy to understand. Not just this, but all the other channels out there, like with graphics and sound design, and it's just amazing. Like Blender is popular because of the community, most of than anything. Okay, let's move on. That was the 2 or 4 times faster, between 2 and 4 times faster, these 4 nodes. And curves, related to curves, you can now apply geometry nodes on curves. So yay for that. Support curves is getting some love. And the the delete brush in curves when you're sculpting. Today I also saw somebody posting excited about the hair in Blender, like the new curves hair. So yeah, the commit goes as follows: support spherical delete brush. So not only projection, so from the in 2D projection, but also 3D, like an actual sphere, with a fall off, with all types of fall off now it is supported by the delete curve brush. Now all the brushes got added the curves in their name. So add curves, delete curves, and so on and so forth, because it was giving some issues. It was making so some brushes will become 0.001 and so on. What else? Oh yeah, while we are at it, let's just look at, it was here, this Katie de Souza made this just this test with the hair, and it's just so cool. Like, it's so excited, and then yeah, people going nuts, like 8,000 likes almost already, and making videos about it. It's so cool to see. This is experimental. It's not even in alpha yet, because this is not gonna be in 3.2 at all. This is for later, maybe 3.3 if it makes it out of the experimental before beta 3.3. But it's so cool to see just people already making curly hair Suzanne's and stuff. This is so cool. Anyway, if you're not on Twitter, hashtag B3D, well, she didn't even use hashtag B3D, but because I saw Blender was being mentioned here. But if you're not on Twitter, Twitter is this social network by Elon Musk that it has a pretty big community. If you search B3D, it's insane. You get tutorials, support, you can ask questions, hashtag B3D, and so on and so forth. I just wanted to say the Elon Musk thing. Okay. Although the Mastodon community in Blender is also pretty big. Let's switch gears a little, switch pipes into user interface. Related to geometry nodes and color attributes. This is a patch by Ethan that makes the add color attribute a bit easier to use, because it is how it used to look. Whenever you create a new attribute, a color attribute, it will give you drop downs, but actually the drop downs only had 2 options. So it makes sense to, like, usually in Blender, if you see a drop down that only has 2 options, unless the name of the labels are too long, then they should be they should be expanded like this, so it's easier and you can see at a glance already. I wonder what happens, because it's highlighted. So if I open this and press F, it will select this, but then what? F-O? Interesting. Or it will trigger it. Anyway, something to look at it later. This menu also, in that same pop-up dialog, now there is a new option to have the fill color for the new color attribute. So by default, Blender will always create a white vertex color or color attribute in the new lingo. And now you can actually choose a color to start with, which is awesome, because if you're going to use a color attribute for, I don't know, bump, you may want to start in a 0.5, not like in gray, not white or black. So yay for that. Saving steps. Thank you, Ethan, for working on that. What else? Oh, this is a bug fix, but I wanted to mention because it was reported in like 3 years ago, in 2019. Something about the shortcuts not appearing in some tooltips for tools. And now they do. So apparently so basically you're gonna see tooltips. This is a bug fix. I don't usually mention bug fixes, but this one, I think it's pretty neat that something so old already has been fixed, and it helps you discover shortcuts. What else? Let's it is more like animation side of the UI updates. This improvement is related to motion paths. So motion paths had a hard-coded range of 1 to 250 for ages, forever. Now you can actually choose if you want to choose to have a motion path for a custom range, like the scene frame range, the selected keyframes only, or all the keyframes, which makes so much sense. Thank you, Colin, for working on it. And the entire animation module. They had a meeting last week. I don't know what is the outcome of the meeting, but I know you can go to DevTalk meeting and then see. So animation rigging meeting from 28th. This is the meeting from last week. And you can see what they actually talked about. Doesn't get more transparent than this. Well, maybe if the video was recorded of the meeting or something, but okay. It is already pretty transparent to see what the team are working on. So every module has meetings usually, and you can find them, the meeting notes in here in the meeting section of the DevTalk forum. What else? Okay, related to animation as well. The discontinuity filter in the dope sheet now. No, wait, it was in the graph editor. It's now available in the dope sheet, and it's also in the menu, but like just simply add it to the menu. But also the poll, like the not Paul as in Pablo in English, poll. It's now a bit more permissive. So if you run this on many other operators that depend on this, like the editable keyframes, now they should work in both the graph editor and the dope sheet or action or grease pencil or basically any action editor that looks like a dope sheet. That sheet is dope. Every time I say dope sheet, I suffer inside, and we're gonna get demonetized. We don't monetize these videos anyway. But I've been practicing my English. I'm not only learning Dutch, but also trying to learn English pronunciation stuff with some apps on the phone. Just for you, Prug. Just for you. If you don't know who Prug is, watch the first Open movie. Okay. Hue saturation. Oh yeah, this is a fix in the paint. Well, I think we could just do some potpourri. Let's change pipes into potpourri because this one is for painting. The saturation filter, those filters that you can simply activate in sculpt mode, paint, color filter, and then you basically click and drag to adjust it. Now works as expected. So in the top is how it used to be. When you apply it was a bit too strong. Look at how this is. Well, you can probably not even see it on YouTube due to compression, but there is a little color stamp here, and this is how it used to work. So it was a bit too. It wasn't using the saturation, the first saturation of the strokes as a multiplier. Now it is. So the more you do it, then you're gonna. It's more subtle basically. So it only applies to the most saturated like strokes, and the least ones are gonna take a few more tries. Next. Outliner. Let's talk a little bit about the outliner. There is a new column in the library overrides section that allows you to toggle if a library override should be editable or not. So easy, so cool. This is, so for example, if you are a rigger maybe, and you're preparing, or a character TD, you're preparing the characters for the animators to use. Well, you can now more easily, there is no screenshot, but it's just a new column in the library overrides in the outliner that allows you to toggle if you want. Maybe you are using overrides, but you don't want them to be editable down the line. For example, you are rigging and you're overriding certain settings from the character, like not down the line, but up the line, up the pipeline, like when you have linked materials, linked meshes, linked collections, you can override those and you can tag them if you don't want them to be overridden in the future when the character gets linked down the pipeline. And that's super flexible. Just locking thing. Basically, you're locking editability of overrides. So pipeline stuff. It's hard to explain because I think most of the people are not using Blender so much inside of a big pipeline, and so it's hard to explain it. But if you are doing production work, it's essential to be able to toggle what can be overridden and what can't. So okay, Brett, you do a wonderful. Thank you, Brett, for that. I try my best. I know my accent is really thick and it's hard to understand sometimes, but I try my best. I'm not doing a thick accent on purpose. The time has come for Grace Pencil updates. This is actually the very first and only, I think, update as the recording of this video in Blender 3.3 alpha. So this option, the new auto masking options in Grace Pencil, are not going to be visible in 3.2. You've been warned. What does it do? Well, there's no video, or not even a... Oh, there is one now. Well, before when I was looking at this, it wasn't there. So basically, it's a way for doing auto masking. So in auto masking, you may be familiar with it in sculpting, where you can sculpt and auto mask out areas, for example, that are not connected to the mesh or that do not have a similar or mask or face sets, for example. So, or topology even. If the topology matches, you can auto mask that area if it matches on the other side, for example, like in the x-axis. The setting, similar setting, is now applied for here. So for example, this first moving around, the sculpting around, it is affecting everything because there is no masking, auto masking enabled. If we see this video a bit bigger, in the advanced panel, stroke, if you enable that, the masking will be applied to the connected strokes. If you use layers, everything in the active layer is going to be affected. Super nice. And the last option is material. So if you want to affect only those strokes using specific material, now you can. So cool. That's so nice. We didn't have that before. It's crazy. Well, you had masking, but you had to... This is awesome. So nice. Okay, what else? I just wanted to mention, this is a fix actually, but still relevant because you may have found that the offset modifier, which is really popular when doing cutout animation, for example, there was a performance regression. What is a regression is when it's not as good as it used to be, or like it changed on how it used to be. Those regressions are most of the time not what it should happen. Like regressions are a big no. Sometimes there is no way around it. For example, when when Blender moved from layers to collections, for example, you can't go back into layers. You can't save because the system will convert the layers into collections and you can't make them back to layers. That's a regression, but sometimes it's acceptable. This one is not though. So the performance was, it had performance issues, this modifier, since the addition of randomize. So I think it's been around for 1 or 2 releases already. So if you use the the offset modifier a lot, you may want to update your Blender. This though, it's part of Blender 3.2. So you're saved if you are going to be doing production work with Grease Pencil in 3.2. And last but not least, VR news. You can now see the object extras. So the wires, for example, of a camera, an empty, you name it. Now there is a setting in the menu that allows you to basically toggle, just like you can do in the viewport. You can toggle this per type object extras, like the drawing, the wires. All right, I think we are good. Trauma best, not try my best. Try my best, not trauma best. I am following the chat here. Thank you, Patrick. You're speaking in Spanish. I do this live stream, exact same live stream in Spanish after today, like today, but after I finish this, I go home and I do the same in Spanish. So you should check that one out. It's usually better than Blender.Today because I already ran into the mistakes, or I already learned what is new in Blender. So when I have to explain it in Spanish in 1 hour, I usually do a better job, or at least don't commit don't make the same mistakes. All right, time to see what's new in the questions. I'm gonna 29 questions. Okay. Let's see. You can leave your questions. I read the comments, the comments here, but you should leave questions in the thread so we can see them. So we can answer them and go through them. Okay, so let's I'm gonna switch to the next side. First question by Via the Vena. Hi Pablo, is there some news about the viewport compositor? Yes, there is a blog post coming. Great timing. Looks like made up almost, but Omar, the developer that is working on that, on the viewport compositor, is writing a blog post that I need to review tomorrow and give some feedback. So I haven't seen it yet. It should be in good state, but there will be news, as in an update on what is the current status of it. So stay tuned for that. If everything goes well, it might be live this week. So just make sure you check out social media, Blender social media, like the Blender developers, Twitter or YouTube, like Twitter for Blender developers, and the blog post and the code blog here. And I think we still have RSS. Yeah, we have RSS. The next question by Frostcrack Studio. Hello, by the way. Frostcrack Studio, how are you? I hope you had a great weekend. Almost all add-ons are added to the end panel. So what about making a add-on tab for all the third-party add-ons and have a drop-down window that shows all the names of the add-ons, or drawing the text horizontal? Okay, the text horizontal. How? Like, it's gonna be even okay. There's multiple problems with that. Like multiple layers for sure. Okay, one, the problem that every add-on in existence wants to have their own tab for some reason. You can literally add your buttons, your add-on, to anywhere in Blender. You can add it to a panel already in the item, or you can add it here in the settings, or in the scene, or in the anywhere. But most people decide they want a new tab. So you end up with a bunch of tabs, and the tabs in Blender currently have a big issue that they don't have a minimum height, and you can't scroll through them. Like if you have too many, you can't read anymore what's the content, and yeah, you can't see much basically. You can't scroll in them. So that's something that Blender has to fix, but still, if you have a bunch of tabs, then it gets messy. So there was a proposal time ago to have a drop-down that basically, like, you can choose the list of the tabs. So instead of having them as tabs, you have them as a drop-down. So yeah, that is one solution, but no one is working on it, unfortunately. I don't know, is anybody in the community? Last few times I asked for help from the community, that happened. Can you please give these tabs a minimum height? and or maybe just make it use, because actually these tabs, they allow for scrolling. So can we grab that and put it and support for text and use it here? I know I'm asking a lot though, because if the core developers couldn't fix it easily, but yeah, we have 3 types of tabs in Blender. We have these tabs, and these tabs. It's just a bit too much. All right, the next question by Emrecan OS Can. Hello Pablo, thank you for the stream. Thank you for dropping by. I love Blender from the bottom of my heart. For 2 years, I have now worked as a 3D artist with Blender, even for commercial projects. Yay. My question, will Blender focus on heavy scene environments with more than 10 million polygons? As of right now, I am working on multiple projects where I can't just optimize my workflow anymore. I tried every optimization technique, baking, retopo, that is known to me, but scenes just get unusable when adding too many meshes or textures whenever the scene gets too heavy. I also work with a really strong and powerful computer, but Blender can't handle scenes with many objects and polys like Maya, 3ds Max, or other 3D software. This is very frustrating for me because I don't want to be limited by an object poly count, and Blender is the only 3D software that I would like to use. Thank you for your time. Performance, if you have followed Blender since 2.8, performance has been improving on every single release. He has performance improvements every area basically. Mesh editing in 3.1 is much faster than in 3.0 and 2.93, or almost some areas are up to the level of 2.7. In 3.1 we had subdivision on GPUs. That helped a lot as well. So it's, as you can imagine, not something so straightforward to implement, like make things faster. Blender editing, it's one thing, while like moving objects, like edit mode with object mode, it's 2 different worlds. Sculpt mode, for example, also uses some other type of mesh internally, like mesh storage, that makes it fast for that one case. Vertex paint used to be slow because of using its own structure. Now it's using similar to Sculpt. So improvements are happening. If you compare again 2.8 with 3.2, it's a huge change, especially painting performance is being worked on at the moment. But yeah, it's just really hard to do, and not a lot of people can do this kind of stuff. It has to be core Blender developers, and that takes a lot of time, and it takes time from their own projects. So if you want to help, you may be familiar with the Blender Development Fund. I'm not going to talk much about it because I always do, but yeah, keep in mind, when Blender 2.9 came out, we were, I think, 2,600 or so. When Blender 3.1 came out, I made a blog post and we were like, hey, maybe we can get it to 3,000. And yes, people are contributing a lot, but it's still kind of crazy, right? We have Blender had 18 million downloads last year. 18 million. And less than 3,000 people supported financially, which is it's a lot of people. 3,000 people, it's a lot, but also shows how, yeah, how the gap is huge. If yeah, it's not really, actually not really a lot. Like the donut, the NFT had 17,000 people. If 17,000 people, all of them will join, this number will be huge. Less than 3,000. Anyway, no time for begging or nothing. It's just how it works. Optimizing Blender is always in the back of the developer's head. If you follow the show, you probably know that the developers are working on performance improvements every week. It's just not so easy. With the new hair curve, X-Dragon asks how to turn off the wire around it, the wire box around it. I think it's just how it's drawn at the moment, but it's alpha, so it's not the final result. But you need to have some kind of bounding box to select, because I think the selection doesn't happen now in the hairs. So once that is implemented, you can actually select hairs. It can go. What else? Also, did you know that Blender crashes if the new hair curve is in Sculpt mode and no tool is selected and you click anywhere in the 3D space? I did reported it. I didn't know, but if you reported it, it's going to be fixed. Thanks for reporting, by the way. Costa says, hey Pablo, greetings from Israel. Nice. I always wanted to go to Israel. Hope you're doing well, as always. Hopefully. I am doing pretty well, thank you. It is a lot to ask you to make a change in the Blender forum so dark mode to our eyes don't get burned. What Blender forum? DevTalk has a dark mode. It's a dark mode. I think you can even change it from the settings. Or Blender, this is dark mode. You can change it if you want to light mode. I think I had a setting, but I removed it. Anyway, it is dark mode. Hey Pablo, do you think it would be beneficial to add a survey functionality to the motion tracking module? Basically, being able to attach known 3D coordinates to 2D trackers prior to solve, either from a photogrammetry scan of the scene or from a previously tracked shot in the same location. This feature is in various other 3D tracking software and it's really helpful for aligning multiple shots that were all taken in the same location. That we have no parallax and are unsolvable on their own. Could be solved if you fed the software information about 2D tracking locations. Sounds like a very useful, and you're saving on a lot of tracking if you already have that data. And especially if you can re-track those. This though, it's maybe you are in luck, because there is another blog post coming in the motion tracking module. You could suggest this if you go to the developer.blender.org the modules, VFX and video, which is where the motion tracking is. There is a channel, a mailing list, and a channel. There's no dedicated channel for motion tracking. That's strange. But anyway, you could drop it as a suggestion in the chat and to see what, maybe there is already a patch and I'm not familiar with, which is most of the case. That. Okay. Next. But yeah, I agree. It's something that has to happen. And not long ago, actually 2 weeks ago, we had Sebastian Kunech, a artist that is also doing sound development in the module. Actually, he is the artist that did the tracking for Tears of Steel and worked together with Sergey, the developer that made the motion tracker, the movie clip editor, that they're working together on improving the tracking stuff. Glenn asks, hi Pablo, thank you so much for helping get the Snap Utilities add-on Rotate fixed. It's wonderful being able to draw meshes properly for cloud stuff. Also, thank you so much to Germano Cavalcante. Yes, he made the actual fix. Two other things. Can the box select... Okay, so these are feature requests, I guess. Can the box select be changed so we can select any part of a curve in edit mode? We can only select the edge points and sometimes have to zoom out hips, but when curves are rotated... that makes sense. Like select by clicking on the curve. Yeah, makes sense. Although, is there not a mode for that? Like you can select, like in a mesh, you can switch into edge select mode. And then on curves, you should be able to select also. Yeah, would be nice, right? I guess that would be a clean implementation, is to have something like this switch to select between different parts that you can even shift click to select both, and then have the same for this. I agree with myself. I don't know what you guys think. The The other thing is can the increments be shown in perspective mode in the grid? Overlay with separate colors in the settings for the grid line and increments, please. There is just one color for both the increments and the grid lines. In the top view, it is sometimes difficult to figure out. Ah, yeah, I think I know what you mean. Let's look at it. So if I'm in orthographic view and then I move this, so there is these lines and there is the tiny lines, and the increment is actually the tiny squares. If I zoom out a bit, still that, and then at some point it just becomes, okay, this is the increment. So yeah, there's no indicator really of what is the increment. How would you show it though? Because you don't want to show tiny lines all the time, right? So do you show it only when snapping is on? How do you have a graphic, like something? Because it's actually would be pretty neat to see where is this the increment. Next, Blender Bob. Blender Bob, are you coming to the Blender conference? Blender Bob, would be nice to meet you. Is there any reason why we can't keyframe the visibility of a collection? The only way to do is to instance and make the outline messy. Cheers. Yeah, there is a there is a technical reason. I don't remember exactly which one, but when this was implemented, I was just asking for trouble. Like there was something issues with the dependency graph, and yeah, just I think this can be, no, nothing can be animated. This you can. Not even the visibility for those. Yeah, no, there was some issue with the dependency graph, that what would happen, like if you animate it and it was yeah, what happens if you animate in a collection and then you instance that collection? What are you keying then? In an instance, it makes sense. It just follows the logic of an object. But if you have this collection, what happens? Like, do the instances override the animation of the visibility? There's so many possibilities. So that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes when that happens, like if you see something working and not working in that specific case, there is usually a big reason. Although sometimes happens that it's just legacy. Like maybe the moment back then the dependency graph was not like polished enough to support that. So it's worth asking again, like you're doing now. Although I don't know of any specific reason why I wouldn't. And now that I think of it, any property, actually everything in Blender is animatable, except those operators or settings that have a specific flag that makes it not animatable. Basically, you clear the flag, so internally in the code. It was amazing when this happened. This change happened in Blender 2.5, that everything became animatable. It was such a mess. You could even change the resolution of a render over time. It was fantastic. But yeah, people start reporting issues that things don't work when you make a video and you animate the videos encoders go crazy. So okay, we have to remove, and yeah, party pooper. So this is, I think it was also the case, people reporting issues with animating collection visibility, and then okay, no, it's just the system doesn't support it or something like that. Anyway, that being said, if you compile Blender, you can probably look at the code for this and clear that flag. It's in the RNA stuff, or maybe ask someone that maybe you think it knows how to do it. It's super simple. You just remove one line of code to make the button animatable. Then if things work or not, that's a separate story, but sometimes it happens that you just need to try, and maybe things are not too bad and they can be revisited. Anyway, I'm running out of time. It's already 1 hour past. Let's do 5 more questions. If there is 5 more. Yeah, there is. Okay, so Sansuls, thank you for making the post. Hey Pablo, I have a quick question. If an add-on comes with Blender, why is it an add-on in the first place? Why couldn't the feature of the add-on be integrated in Blender? That is a very, very good question. Add-ons, what makes an add-on and what doesn't? It's sometimes arbitrary, sometimes it makes sense. For example, Node Wrangler. Node Wrangler, it's an add-on. It started as an add-on because it was a bit too invasive for my taste. Like, this is, I'm talking Blender 2.7 prior. There was here in the sidebar, there was like all the nodes there. It had so many shortcuts. I think it got toned down in the end, but there was just so many shortcuts here. For example, some of these options, like frame selected. What is frame selected? It's add a parent frame node. Some of these options could become part of Blender, but some of the other are a bit too specific to one case, and they should be either implemented in all the rest of Blender. Sometimes some add-ons don't follow that. There is also the Grease Pencil add-on, for example, the Grease Pencil tool add-ons, which is great, but it has way too many overrides over the existing Blender workflow. So it doesn't apply for everybody, only for people that are really serious about Grease Pencil and maybe use Blender as a 2D animation editor mainly, for example. So that's why it's good that some things are for like 3D printing. Why would you have 3D printing tools if you don't do 3D printing? So you come here and you enable it, and then you have 3D printing stuff. Because remember, Blender opens really fast. For me, is one of the fastest so far, that it opens so fast. However, the more add-ons do you have, the slower it gets, basically. When startup, he has to load a bunch of scripts. Those scripts, maybe some of them like overlap. For example, yeah, that's the main reason, that some add-ons conflict with each other because they are meant for different workflows. Sometimes like for example, the import out and export. There's a bunch of stuff here that I don't use. So if this was my Blender that I use for using Blender, actually this is a Blender I use for showing on the live streams, I would probably just remove a bunch of these. Like, I wouldn't have PLI or FBX, OBJ. I don't use those. So you can, if you don't use those, you can just simply go here and remove those that you don't use. Like, not remove, but disable, and then your Blender is gonna be faster. Measurable to the millisecond though. Okay, next. Hey Pablo, I recently had a discussion about platform-specific shortcuts. Is there a general convention with common shortcuts to implement and how to handle it for different platforms? For example, the file browser views Windows and Linux control scroll. File browser views control wheel, and Mac OS is command 1 2 3 4. Yeah, usually Blender has platform-specific shortcuts. For example, the preferences on Apple stuff on Mac OS is usually command comma or dot or something like that. So that in Blender on a Mac, that's what it uses for the preferences. The same goes for the position of buttons. For example, if you close Blender on Windows, the save button is somewhere else. It's not here. Because the Microsoft guidelines say that the save should be on the other side, and the Mac OS has a different convention. Linux, it's everything's possible, so it doesn't have a real convention because KDE and GNOME and other desktop environments have different conventions. Usually Linux follows Mac OS in that case, like in the position of the buttons here. Also because it makes sense. Usually on the bottom right is what you want to do, right? Like next, or yeah, you get it. Okay. What about the Cycles add-on? Yeah, Cycles is an add-on. No, it's not an add-on. It's more than an add-on. You can toggle it on and off as an add-on, but yeah, it's burned into Blender. Okay, let's find 3 more comments. Sovyoda, too bad you can't keyframe resolution. Only noobs use real videos and output. Should be possible to do it for the image sequence. Yeah, that would be pretty neat. But yeah, not possible. Hey, there is a bunch of questions, and they're sorted by time. I should actually read the ones at the bottom. Let's see. Hola Pablo, just a simple question. I want to update 3.0 to 3.3 when stable comes out. How can keep all my themes created, add-ons, and settings? Do I have to upload a whole new program, or can I just update the one I have? You can just install Blender 3.3 with the installer, and then you can, well, actually 3.3 is going to be an LTS, so you're going to be safe for longer. The way you would move your settings, like the best way I would say is if you do it manually. Just look up where Blender stores the preferences on your platform, Windows, Linux, or Mac, and copy over. If you go to user preference, for example, on Linux, it's in config, Blender, and then there is a folder for each version. So if you want to bring it over, just basically copy and paste it somewhere else in the new version. Inside you have the user pref, the templates and stuff. Hi Pablo, are operators geometry nodes separate enough in the code that a new physics operator will be able to be added in the future by an average C++ coder? I am not the right person to answer, but I would imagine yes, because geometry nodes has been, it's new, it's fresh. It's actually one of the few modules that started by using C++, and then that now more areas of Blender are using C++. But yeah, it should be. Although, go to geometry nodes channel in Blender.Chat to ask the developers about that. So Yoda, when will the job section of the Blender community? It doesn't work. What doesn't work? You should be able to post a job. You can post a job, and then what happens if you post it? It needs to be approved. So maybe, okay, the last one was 8 months ago. So maybe we are not getting notified. I gotta check if there are job entries that are not being published. Oh, oof. Ooh. Okay. Yep. There is a bunch. Create a lamp. Okay, so we haven't been getting notified about these things. Thank you for why do people don't tell me those things? Yeah, usually we will get an email. We, as in Francesco and myself, which we are the creators of Blender community, and we maintain it. Blender community is it's not technically an official Blender product. It's a community that we just made, but we happen to work at Blender, so we use it for our own stuff, and then we right-click select came up, but we're talking about making this more official. Like, we can improve the site during work hours instead of doing it at home or on a Sunday on the evenings. So yeah, anyway, I think I really ran out of time now, and let's scroll the way down because they are sorted by times. I want to, the first people to comment, I should reply at least to those. Team, how's your day going? It's doing fantastic. It's sunny, and now I'm going to, and I've been locked inside all day, and I'm about to go home to be locked again, but for a good reason, to make Blender today in Spanish. I was wondering when the geometry nodes editor will be added to the pie menu shortcut. There is no pie menu shortcut for the... Which pie menu shortcut? Geometry nodes editor. Which pie menu? There's no pie menu for editors, as far as I know. Fike. Then the second, okay, the last three. How is light linking and Eevee next coming along? Will they be done for 3.2? No, people, please. PSA here. 3.2 is over. 3.2 is beta. There is no more updates. It's not over. I mean, it's gonna be fixed, but a big thing like a new render engine like EvenX or a big feature like light linking is not gonna make it in 3.2. It's just over. The window for adding new feature is over, so 3.3. And the last question by Olkey. Hey Pablo, do you guys have any discussions or plans in the headquarters about new UI? Course current UI doesn't fit to grease pencil painting sculpting. They need their own UI with different logic, and of course new UI for add-ons. What do you mean? The current UI doesn't fit the grease pencil painting sculpting? People are using it for that already. I know it's not great, but and we need a new brush manager, for example, which maybe that's what you mean. But saying that they need a new UI for different logic and of course new UI for add-ons. Oh, maybe you mean the sidebar. It's a bit broad, the question, but yeah, we need UI people. We need the people with experience in user interfaces and user experience. But those people are hard to find, especially people that want to contribute a work at the beginning, mainly as volunteers. Like Blender rarely hires people that has never contributed to Blender. If you see everybody in this building and online, everybody that has been hired has usually at first done contributions to Blender on their own by volunteer, and there's not a rule or anything. It's just that it shows dedication. You know, hiring people, it's a big step in a small company like Blender. So usually those people have been contributing patches and stuff, and sometimes people don't even want to be hired because they have another job and they don't want the pressure to, now I'm working for Blender, I must like report every week what I've done. And so, but we need UI people for sure that first do things and can push Blender further. All right, I'm gonna call it because I'm already without voice. Ooh, I have some notations here. Haha. Let's see. Is it possible to be read? Nah. Okay, it's talking. It's mentioning a little bit. There is the word app there. What is that? Surprise. Okay, time to call it a day. I hope you had a good show. I had so much fun. We actually managed to answer a bunch of questions. We saw some artwork. We saw the new release. 3.3 alpha, of course, doesn't have many features. It's technically not a clickbait, although this title is called 3.3 alpha, but I know people are gonna make videos with this name. Just beware that there's nothing new really, and it's a few hours old. It's like asking a newborn about, okay, what have you done? And it's like, dude, I was just born a few hours ago. Something like that. Okay. I remove my headphones because it's time to call it a day and blow your ear holes with some music. Okay. Have fun. I hope you have a great week ahead of you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch out your ear holes. It's not even that loud. Not even that loud, right? Okay. Get Blender 3.2 beta is probably not there yet in the build, so hold on for a moment and report any bugs that you might find, please, so we don't end up with 3.2.1, 3.2.2 and that kind of stuff. Have fun, have a great week. See you next week, same place, same time for another episode of Blender Today Live.